I'm going to flip our skill set approach around, and I'm going to start with boards first. So much conversation about what's needed in the board right now. We're going to avoid a lot of that. You can go read a ton about it, but go read a lot about cybersecurity in the boardroom. We're not going to rehash that right now. But I would like to touch on specifically to what we're talking about today, technology innovation and a multi-generational workforce. Shubi, you're a public board director. What do you think we need to be thinking about in that skills matrix in this regard?
So slightly different, I think, in a tech company or a fintech company versus, I think, a non-tech company. But let's just say for a second, focusing on the tech companies. Historically, we've always said that board members do need to demonstrate, like I said earlier, business acumen, strategic acumen, financial acumen, the domain expertise, as well as the functional expertise that they bring to bear to the board. And it was assumed that everybody on the board understood, at least not necessarily be audit committee member, but understand how to read financials, feel comfortable to sign off on the 10Ks and the Qs, right? Like food, water, shelter, basics. You got to have that down. And I am definitely beginning to hear, see, as more and more searches are being done, that digital acumen is becoming a very important part. It's no longer, oh, well, we have person A, B, C who has this very strong background. Just like you're expected to understand everything from a financial perspective, I think you don't need to be deep experts again. You should have a couple of folks on the board that are the deep experts, but you need to be able to participate because these are big conversations and discussions. Everything from revamping your code of conduct to setting up, your policies. It might be the cyber policies or data policies or even overall AI policies, HR policies. So much is changing. So governance overall across the board is changing. And to be a board member today, I think you have to have that understanding. You don't need to be a digital native, but for sure need to understand.
Digital literacy?
Digital literacy, yeah. And moreover, it's not just understanding it for now and here today. And by the way, I say this with all the love and kindness in the world, generative AI does not equal AI. So I hear all these people, well, I banged out 5 prompts today. And I'm like, oh, yeah, great, but that's not AI. That's great, we did that. But that is not AI, right? I mean, AI is much bigger, wider, whether it's robotics and neural networks. And so generative AI is only $2.3 trillion of the $20 trillion is supposed to be by 2025, right? So it's a small percent of it. So it is not only, I think it's board members, it is a bit of a hill to climb to understand what's happening today, but moreover, what's coming in the next 5 years.
Holly, talk to us a little bit about the athletic factor that directors need to bring to the table, maybe more now than before.
So my perception is, and you all have been doing this longer than I have, but the board piece, my perception is that there used to be a value in having very deep, narrow, siloed expertise. And today, I think these board members are needing to bring a level of expertise, but also a level of horizontal athleticism. And so the notion that, oh, that person will cover, and I think that this, by the way, extends from the board all the way down to leadership teams. Yeah. Because what I'm seeing is problem solving is being done in a completely different manner today. It used to be, oh, you're the CISO, go solve that problem, that's your problem. Today, a CISO, a GC, a product leader, a customer leader, an HR leader, they're getting together and solving whatever the problem is for the company. And it's the same at the board level. And so I believe that it's really more about being really strong athletes than being, but also having a domain that you're maybe deep in, but it's not sufficient anymore to just be a narrow subject matter expert.
Yeah, and that inevitably in the conversation, we then have to talk about continuous skilling and relevancy of directors. And I'll go on and tell y'all, moment of vulnerability here. I retired out of a 30-year operational career at the end of 23. I immediately started feeling scared about my relevancy and my knowledge. And I mean, I had just spent 3 decades in Fortune 100 companies doing highly technical jobs, and I was scared to death about my relevancy. And that's real. It's true because that is how fast things are changing. And while the skills that most CEOs and CFOs practice in their careers, those are evergreen. And all of us are always going to have financial literacy if you're sitting around the board table. There's now this need for digital literacy, but it is such a changing beast more than financial literacy is. I don't think there's necessarily an answer to this. I'm bringing it up to say we have to normalize this in the conversation. As directors, we have to normalize conversation around here's what I'm doing to learn more. Here's what I'm doing to stay relevant. Here's what I'm doing to share it with you guys. What are you guys doing to come and share it with me? I think education and continuous learning in the boardroom is becoming more of a team sport where we learn and share with each other. And I don't think that happened at all 10 to 20 years ago. So it's an interesting time.
But, as Holly said, you do have to go horizontal in understanding the basics of, let's say, digital acumen and AI, but you do need to now go more deeper in your sector. So if it is robotics, because you're in manufacturing, well, you need to really understand that pretty deep. If you are looking at autonomous vehicles, and if you're in that sector, well, you really need to understand that. So if you're on those, depending on the different board you're on, different companies as company leaders, you need to have a pretty good understanding how to go deep vertically, because doing the whole thing is like boiling the ocean. It's a lot. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of really being strategic about understanding the foundational pieces and then going really deep in your domain.
So what y'all are hearing here is do it all, go broad and go deep, and do it at the same time for 4 different boards. I'm only slightly being facetious here because I think that truly is the mandate that's on us. And we have to figure out what that means and what each of our individual boards needs in that regard, right? I want to touch real quick on skills in the boardroom are one thing. We need to be looking for and cultivating different skills in the enterprise now. Especially Shubi, you made the point earlier that a lot of entry-level jobs can be automated more now. So what are we looking for to cultivate, to augment that automation, right? So Holly, I want to start with you. What do companies need to be cultivating?
Yeah. I love this question because it's like you
came up with it.
No, I don't. Did I? Oh, great. That's why I love it. No, I love this question because it's evolving so fast and it just keeps changing. I think the first thing I would say is context. Your employees in your companies where your board members are using Gen AI, they're using AI. So if you think they're not, they are. And if there's a policy that says they can't, they'll take it home and do it at home. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say is, this new generation of workers is incredibly curious, and they are very invested in feedback and learning and development and their own self-development. So, sort of hard skills, if you think about the hard skills, there's 4 right now you're hearing a lot about. Data literacy, and this isn't like, reading a spreadsheet. This is complex data literacy, the ability to analyze and interpret really complex data. AI and machine learning, we talked a little bit about that. Ethics skills within the company, that's a kind of a new one you haven't heard so much about. So ethics, expertise, and then cyber. So those are hard skills. As a board member, what I would say is they're very expensive. They're in very high demand. If you have a workforce that says you must come to the office 5 days a week and the person lives someplace else, know that it may take you a little bit longer to staff those jobs. So it's not built into your budgets, your operating budgets. Those are great questions to ask. Like, how are you thinking about that? Especially if there's skill gaps in the company. On the soft side, I think that there's several that are really sort of bubbling up and emerging. Collaboration, we talked about it. This notion of, are you a good collaborator in a horizontal manner? Is it one of the things you're known for as a leader? Do you have an innovation mindset? Are you curious? Are you constantly curious? Are you wanting to learn more? Do you use agile practices? How do you think about failure as a method to learn? Judgment and critical thinking, Shubi brought this up, and this is so real. You can't just have a workforce that's curious and doesn't actually know how to do anything. So having that balance of, sorry, that sounded a little harsh. Having that balance of, judgment within the workforce that balances some of this digital native, the digital native skills that are brought forward. And then this may be more of a comment around some of our younger generations, but I think this is so real. How resilient and flexible are you? Because the pace of change has increased so dramatically, and I see a lot more mental health issues bubbling up. If you have operations in Europe, what you're seeing is, I'm feeling very stressed and I'm going on a 6-month leave. By the way, you need to pay me for those 6 months and you need to protect my job. So this has a very specific financial implication where there's a lot more, in the parts of the world where there's a lot more workers' rights and protections. So resiliency and flexibility are the other skills I think are.
And there's an interesting development right now. More states are allowing mental health claims to apply to workers' comp. Traditional workers' comp, where we think about broken legs, whatever, they're now allowing mental health claims. I think that we don't know what those implications are going to be yet, but they are not negligible and they're non-zero from a cost perspective as well.